come back to Princeton in a moment. Let's do this chronologically. Thursday, as you said, not only games in Vegas, but also in New York as well. East region in New York, West region in Vegas. The East regional games, Florida Atlantic and Tennessee. Tennessee, the Vols favored by 5.5. Total set at 130. And then Michigan State and Kansas State. A lot of people surprised to see both of these teams here. Kansas State was considered an overseeded team as a number 3. Izzo just doing his thing, and Kansas State was the favorite. Now Michigan State is the favorite, as high as 2 now. We're seeing with a total 137.5. Any thoughts on either of those two to start with in New York?
I definitely lean the underdog in both of them. We just saw this happen with Kansas State. They were a dog against Kentucky. Kentucky took some money, and they had the best 2 players on the floor, especially Marquise Noel for K-State. Had a monster game against the Wildcats. He's so fast. He can kind of get wherever he wants on the floor. As long as he's under control with his passes and isn't trying to do something too fancy, he makes a ton of plays for them. Their shot making was excellent. They did get out rebound a little bit by those monster Wildcats from Kentucky, but I like Kansas State again there. And then Florida Atlantic against Tennessee. This is a team that can really spread you out, can shoot. That's Tennessee's weakness, and they didn't face a lot of it in the SEC. They did not face any of it against Duke. That's not what Duke does. They kind of bludgeon you at the rim. Tennessee stands up to that. With all the guards that Florida Atlantic has, and now they're back in the underdog role. They don't have to cover 16 against a 16 seed. I like FAU there. I think they can spread out Tennessee and knock in shots.
All right, let's go to the West regional games on Thursday. Again, these are staggered region to region on Thursday and Friday, as is historically the case. Arkansas and UConn. UConn favored by 4. Gonzaga and UCLA, the tightest line game, along with Michigan State, Kansas State, of the Sweet 16 games. The Bruins favored by 2.
Yeah, I go Arkansas in the first matchup. I just don't love either coach, but Musselman's been really successful, especially lately in the NCAA tournament. Feels a little closer to a coin flip than 3.5, so I'll take the Razorbacks there. They've got the athleticism to tempt UConn into some bad shots in the half court. That's the one I feel a little less confident on, though. I much prefer UCLA in the nightcap. I love this Gonzaga team offensively, but on defense, they're not so sharp. And if you can slow them down, force them to play in the half court, that's when they really start to get vulnerable. It happened to them last year against Arkansas. Musselman came with a great game plan in the Sweet 16. I think Mick Cronin's going to do the same here. They've got some injuries on the wing. Jalen Clark's out for good. David Singleton, his replacement, had a bad rolled ankle this weekend. But they've got 2 absolute gamers in Tiger Campbell and Jaime Jaquez. They've got a star freshman in Amari Bailey. And I just think the way they slow the game down and force Gonzaga to execute is going to be a problem for them. And UCLA has already taken a little bit of money in the market despite the injuries, and I think that's kind of telling.
Yeah. I also feel like Gonzaga won't get every single call like it felt like they did against TCU. That might just be me talking through my TCU ticket, but that's how it felt.
I felt that way too. I was TCU Final Four from the beginning of the year to my bracket, and that one finally flamed out, unfortunately. It was sad to see it go, but they at least gave him a battle and had that wild cover at the end.
All right, how about maybe one of the more amazing ones of all time, and that's saying something. Friday, Midwest and South, Kansas City and Louisville, respectively. Let's start with the Midwest. Miami and Houston. Houston favored by the full touchdown, 7 points. And then Xavier in Texas, which is the only really shortish line of that night. Texas favored by 4.5.
I like Miami in the first one. Houston's advanced numbers, advanced results per shot quality have not been good in this tournament. Scored it as a big loss to Northern Kentucky and then a slight loss to Auburn, which are about 20 points off of where both of those outcomes actually ended up landing. I think that speaks to they're just not getting great shots, this Houston team. They did hit a bunch of them against Auburn especially, but there's some things that are concerning in the underlying play there. And Miami's guards are so talented and experienced in this event. I do lean Miami getting 7 points there. And then I like Texas in the nightcap. Xavier did not impress me against a cadre of athletes in the first round. Kennesaw State basically kind of punked them for a while until Xavier kind of started playing perimeter defense, but it was almost too late. This Texas team is just rolling. I know they got a little bit dicey with Penn State late in that game, but their athleticism and the emergence of Dylan Disu in the lane, I'm going to lay that with the Longhorns.
And then this one I'm kind of shocked by. This line just keeps getting bigger. Alabama now a 7.5 point favorite against San Diego State. Creighton still a 10 point favorite against Princeton.
I think people are still in line to fade the Mountain West, despite San Diego State being 2-0 against the spread in this tournament. One of them was very dicey. And Alabama's just been a juggernaut. Last 5 games, they've won by at least 19, all against NCAA tournament teams. And that's since they moved Von Quinterly into the starting lineup. I think there's like a very straight line to draw between the way they've adjusted their rotation and they're suddenly back to having their mojo and blowing out teams. So as much as I'm kind of tempted by San Diego State, the high line and starting to move up does tell me something a little bit. I'm probably going to be with the Tide considering how strong they've been. Princeton, Creighton, I'll be the spoiler, the stinker, and go with the favorite there. I'll probably lay it. There's more time to prepare here for that Princeton offense, and Creighton is comfortable in the half court, whereas Arizona and Mizzou, you put them in the half court, you slow them down like Princeton did, and they just could not function. Arizona was 6 points in the final 11 minutes of that game. That was really bad for a 2 seed. I think Creighton will be much more functional in the half court, have somewhat of a better defensive plan than both of those teams, and force Princeton into much tougher shots. So I'll say Creighton ends the Cinderella story rather emphatically.
Which bet do you like the most of them?
Probably Texas, and then Miami, Florida getting the 7.
Okay. So then my final 2 megapod-like questions. I mean, you may have hinted at the answer. Of the big favorites, Creighton, Bama, and Houston, the most likely to lose outright would be Houston, in your opinion, to Miami?
Yeah, I think so. Just given Miami's experience, and then Creighton and Alabama, I think have better matchups. Yeah, I think Houston's the most likely.
And of the 8 games, if you were forced to bet all of them, but you've got one pass on the side, which is the game you would want no part of?
Probably Arkansas, UConn, I think.
Arkansas, UConn. Jim, enjoy it, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gill.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.